Toy Story 2 premiered 25 years ago. I've always adored this film because of how many characters it introduced us to, but there's one toy in particular that has tormented collectors for a quarter of a century.
Say hello to the prospector!
Currently on screen is the only movie-scale Stinky Pete ever released, and it was made in Japan, but it's not quite what we're looking for. There's also been a few customs sold within the Toy Story community over the years, but these are either too expensive for me or not quite what I'm looking for, and that left me with no choice but to make my very own Stinky Pete the Prospector. I'm gonna take you through the whole process step by step as we complete the Roundup gang with our own two hands, and the help of my good friend Ivan.
It's a box.
So let's go over the past month of my life as I made not only this box, but the very special toy that's inside. I'm Coded Condor, and this is how I made my very own Stinky Pete. Step 1 was the measurements. I had to get an idea of how big I wanted this toy to be. The paper cutout that you see on screen represents the torso. I knew I was going to use this to trace onto the red fabric and make the outline for my body. Now you might be wondering, how did I determine the torso size? Good question. I contacted Ivan, my 3D printing specialist, and asked him if he could send me the measurements of the head. I used these measurements to make a pipe cleaner skeleton. This made it a lot easier to measure out the body because I now had a makeshift skull to work with. Now it was time to trace our paper cutout onto the fabric and begin the process of making Stinky Pete's body. I like to use chalk when I'm doing these types of tracings because if you mess up you can always wipe it off. Now it's time for the second and final layer of chalk. I'm going to begin doing a second layer further away from the initial trace. The first outline that we drew represents what we want the torso to look like from the front, but to turn that into a three-dimensional toy, we're going to need some extra fabric on the sides so that we can stuff him, just like the Woody and the Jessie dolls. And of course, the most important part of this process is cutting 2 layers of fabric. If you only cut one, you can't really do anything with it. But as you see on screen, we've got our 2 layers, we've got our extra fabric on the sides, and we've got a pillow here full of stuffing that we're going to use to fill up the torso. On to the sewing. We'll be sewing the sides of the body and the legs, and leaving the top open. This will give us a spot to put all of the stuffing in and make it a 3-dimensional toy. Now it's time to turn into the Build-A-Bear workshop because we're on to step 3. Stuffing the torso. For the sake of this video not being 20 minutes long, I'm going to speed up the process. But in all honesty, I spent hours stuffing this toy. No matter how hard I tried, every time I would make the torso bigger and a little bit fatter, it would feel like the legs would just collapse. I did find a solution, however, and that was switching to cutting tiny pieces of stuffing instead of these big chunks that I was trying to force into the toy. By patiently doing one small piece at a time, I was able to take a pencil and carefully point the pieces into the directions I wanted to, and by doing this, I was able to make firm legs that held up the toy well. Not to mention a well-shaped torso, this is already the closest I've ever been to holding a real Stinky Pete toy. As I'm sure you can tell by the blue fabric on my right, the next step will be sewing on his overalls. We're gonna grab that same paper cutout that we used earlier in the video and retrace it onto the blue fabric. This saves us a lot of time on blah blah blah, you get the point. Time to trace once again. Fitting the blue fabric on isn't as easy as it may seem. It's a trial and error process. The clip you're watching is literally just me sewing on the left side, and we ended up with something that looked pretty good, but the more I looked at it, something just started to bother me. It was missing that real denim jeans look that everybody loves on the Woody and the Jessie dolls, and all I could think was, we could do better. After searching around at a few different materials, I landed on this nice denim apron. I feel like it was a close enough match to the on-screen color, and looked like a good match to my real-life Woody and Jessie dolls. And here's a time lapse of the sewing process that went till about 2 in the morning, but I have no complaints. I had a great time sewing this piece together, and I love how the denim overalls turned out. Also, leaving the old blue fabric underneath gave us a bit of extra padding and added to Stinky Pete's fat look. It smoothed out the appearance of the stomach and the back, so you don't really see any of those stuffing lumps anymore. At this point, I'm loving how this is turning out. Why don't we check in with Ivan to see how the 3D printing is coming along? Ivan will be in charge of the head, the hat, the hands, the overall buckles, the pickaxe, and the feet. When he sent me these photos, I had the biggest smile on my face, and not because I ever doubted his abilities, but because I knew that he was working just as hard on his end as I was on my end. These pieces were looking beautiful. The head and the hat looked straight off of the movie screen, and all of the accessories followed suit. I knew I'd found the right partner, and that I had to continue working on this every night until 2 in the morning. Let's finish Stinky Pete's body. We're back in the workshop, and this time it's to make his arms. As I'm sure you remember from the film, he definitely had skinny arms in comparison to his body. So that's the look that we're going for, and I'm gonna do it the old-fashioned way, by laying down the doll, grabbing a tape measure and estimating our measurements. I'll be using Kop's Stinky Pete as a reference and a bit of inspiration, because I think his is just the best on the market with perfect body proportions. There's a reason why it has a price tag of $1,000. You'll notice I'm drawing the arms on in pencil. There's no secret reason for it other than I couldn't find my chalk. Making the arms was a lot easier of a process than the body. At the beginning of this project, we didn't have any physical reference points other than the pipe cleaner skull that we made. However, now that we have the body and the legs finished, it makes it a lot easier to envision the appropriate size of the arms and to cut them accordingly. And as I'm sure some of you may have guessed, we have to repeat the same steps on the arms as we did with the torso. I have to sew them down the sides and the bottom, fill them up with stuffing through the top, and then finally sew them onto the body once Ivan gives me the 3D printed hands. And while all these body parts are looking great, we're still missing one of the most defining traits of Stinky Pete's character that separates him from a majority of the Toy Story universe. He's still in his box, which means not only do we have to make this doll from scratch, but we have to make Stinky Pete's box. Look at the size of this piece of paper in the back of my car. I sat in the lobby of the print shop with the receptionist for nearly 2 hours while they finished printing this thing. While I won't mention their name because I don't want people bothering them, thank you very much to the print shop for taking on this order and doing so for a fabulous price. The quality of the print is beautiful and I can't help but smile when I look at it. It's been over 20 years that I wanted a Stinky Pete toy, so watching all the pieces come together is really rewarding. Luckily for this project, I work in a warehouse that has endless cardboard and endless tape. So towards the end of my shift, I built this bad boy that you see on screen. I cut out a little test window in the front just to get a feel for how the box will function. I determined the size of the box by carefully measuring the printout and testing by putting Stinky Pete inside. I think we nailed the size proportions. Now let's turn this into Stinky Pete's box and get cutting. Take a look at the Stinky Pete box. I'm really impressed with the progress that we've made, and I can't tell you how stressful it was to cut these pieces out. I did not have another 2 hours to spend in the print shop to redo this whole process. And we'll worry about adding the plastic screen to the box later on. For now, we're going to turn our focus back to the doll, because as happy as we may be with the overalls, there's a key detail on the back of Stinky Pete that we've yet to add. If we're going to make a movie-accurate Stinky Pete, he has to have a pull string. So how exactly are we going to achieve that? Well, I went to Walmart and I did some searching, and I found these things called eyelets with tulle. Any of you watching that have owned a Woody or a Jessie doll would know that their pull strings go through this little gold ring in the back. So I knew these would be perfect for the job. For the pull string, I used a white hair tie, and I got these awesome little plastic rings from my grandmother. So thank you, Nonna, for helping with Stinky Pete. And I think we nailed the pull string look. It looks exactly how I wanted it to, and the big day is finally here. We're gonna go meet up with Ivan, pick up our 3D printed parts, and assemble our Stinky Pete to completion. The quality of the work that Ivan did is amazing. I feel like I broke into Disney's secret headquarters and stole an unreleased Stinky Pete from their warehouse. The detail of the head, spot on. It looks just like his toy mode. The hat was well crafted in the perfect shade of brown. Obsessive details that only the most dedicated Toy Story collectors would even notice. And I appreciate Ivan for putting in the honest work to make sure that we achieve those. Even the pickaxe is perfect. He cares about what he's doing, and I appreciate him for it. But enough complimenting Ivan, let's put this doll together. We're back in the workshop, and we're starting with the most important piece, Stinky Pete's head. I purchased a pack of zip ties to attach the head just like they do with the real Woody dolls, and I'll admit, you can see me on camera just sitting there for a few moments and admiring Stinky Pete. A month ago, we had nothing but fabric and a paper cutout, and here we are now, I'm looking at about 70% of a Stinky Pete doll. Let's finish this project. After searching at multiple different fabric stores, I wasn't able to find a yellow fabric with the correct red pattern I was looking for, which left us with no choice but to draw our own. And I'm really happy with how the neck bandana turned out. If you look really close, you can spot imperfections, but I think from afar, it does the trick. Let's grab Stinky Pete's hat and pickaxe and take a look at our final result. Wow, this is it. This is my dream Stinky Pete toy right in front of me. No Disney, no Mattel, just me, Ivan, and a lot of hard work. I'm really proud of this project, and I'm happy that I documented it to share it with you guys. If you've made it this far into the video to enjoy the final product with me, I thank you very much. Why don't we finish this video the only proper way, by putting Stinky Pete back in his box. This video was so much fun to make. I love making this doll, and without a doubt, I'll be doing more custom Toy Story projects in the future. So feel free to comment down below if there's anybody you'd like to see me try to make. To give you a little hint to the future, I will definitely be making the pink bear from Andy's room, as well as Chuckles the clown. Please hit that subscribe button, as we just hit 500 and we're on the road to 1000. And thank you very much for your time. I'll see you in the next video. I'm Cody Condor. Bye bye.